I stood in the back of the Grand Oak Country Club ballroom, watching my father toast himself. 200 guests clinked champagne glasses while Gerald Hammond basked in applause for 40 years in construction. Then he grabbed the microphone, swaying slightly, and announced my brother Brandon would inherit everything. His eyes found mine across the room. My daughter? A job at Wendy's if she's lucky. Brandon leaned into the mic, sneering. She'd screw that up too. Silence crashed over the ballroom. Then Martin, our family lawyer for 30 years, stood up and cleared his throat. Martin walked toward the stage with that deliberate pace I'd seen him use in depositions. My face burned with humiliation. I wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor, to be anywhere but here, with everyone staring at me. 10 years I'd worked for Hammond & Sons Construction. 10 years managing projects, solving problems, keeping crews on schedule. And this was how my father saw me. A punchline. Martin reached the stage and extended his hand for the microphone. My father hesitated, confused, then handed it over with a shrug. The room held its breath. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption," Martin began, his voice steady and professional. "But I have a legal obligation to correct something Gerald just said." He adjusted his glasses and looked directly at my father. "Gerald, you don't have the authority to give away Hammond & Sons Construction." My father laughed, but it sounded hollow. "What are you talking about? I built that company from nothing." "That's not entirely accurate," Martin said. He pulled a folder from his jacket pocket. 30 years ago, when you started Hammond & Sons, you didn't have enough capital. Your wife Carol provided the startup funds from her inheritance. $50,000, which in today's money would be worth over $200,000. In exchange, Carol became a silent partner with a 51% controlling interest in the company. The room erupted in whispers. I felt dizzy. My mother had owned the company? "That's impossible," my father sputtered. "Carol never said anything about owning the business. She maintained her partnership quietly, per your mutual agreement at the time," Martin continued. "When Carol passed away 8 years ago, her shares didn't revert to you, Gerald. They passed to her daughter Althea through a trust I've been managing. Althea is the majority owner of Hammond & Sons Construction. She has been for 8 years. You own 49%. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My mother had done this? For me? The ballroom exploded. People turned to stare at me. Some smiled awkwardly. Others looked shocked. Brandon's face turned the color of raw beef. He pushed back from the head table so hard his chair tipped over. Martin kept talking, his voice cutting through the chaos. "I have all the documentation. Corporate filings, trust documents, notarized agreements. Everything is in order and has been reviewed by independent counsel. Althea, I was instructed to reveal this information upon your father's retirement, as per your mother's explicit wishes." My father grabbed the microphone back, nearly ripping it from Martin's hand. "This is insane. There must be a mistake. Carol would never do this behind my back." But even as he said it, I saw something flicker in his eyes. A memory, maybe. Or guilt. Had he known? Had he forgotten? Or had he convinced himself it wasn't real? Brandon was already moving, phone pressed to his ear, heading for the exit. I watched him go, my mind trying to process what was happening. People crowded around me, offering congratulations that felt more like condolences. Their faces blurred together. I needed to talk to Martin, to understand, to figure out what this meant. I pushed through the crowd, but my father appeared in front of me, blocking my path. His face was purple with rage. "You orchestrated this," he hissed. "You and your mother, scheming behind my back." "I didn't know," I whispered. "Dad, I swear, I had no idea." "Get out of my sight." He turned and started shouting at the remaining guests to leave. The party was over, everyone out. The ballroom emptied in uncomfortable silence. I stood there, frozen, watching my father's world collapse. Part of me wanted to comfort him, but the larger part remembered what he'd said about Wendy's, about me screwing up even that. I found Martin near the exit, packing his folder away. "Martin, I need to understand what just happened." "We'll talk Monday morning at my office," he said gently. "Right now, I'd suggest going home and getting some rest. This is a lot to process." "But why didn't Mom tell me? Why keep it secret?" Martin's expression softened. "She wanted to protect you. From the favoritism. From the pressure. She knew Gerald gave everything to Brandon, while expecting you to prove yourself over and over. She wanted you to have something that was yours by right, not by your father's permission." Tears stung my eyes. That sounded exactly like my mother. Always protecting, always planning ahead. I walked toward the parking lot in a daze. Through the window, I saw Brandon loading something into his truck. He caught my eye and smirked before climbing into the driver's seat. That's when I realized where he was headed. He was going to the office. I ran for my car, hands shaking as I fumbled with my keys. Whatever Brandon was planning, whatever he was about to do, I had to stop it. The company was mine now, mine to protect, mine to lose. I pulled out of the parking lot just in time to see Brandon's taillights disappearing toward the highway. Toward Hammond & Sons Construction. Toward whatever came next. The office building sat dark against the night sky. A 3-story structure my father had purchased 15 years ago when business was booming. My hands gripped the steering wheel as I pulled into the parking lot at 11:15. Brandon's truck was parked by the service entrance, the one by the loading dock. Lights glowed on the 3rd floor, Gerald's executive suite. I used my keycard to enter through the main doors. The building felt wrong at night, all shadows and echoes. My footsteps seemed too loud in the empty lobby. I took the elevator up, my heart hammering against my ribs. The elevator doors opened to chaos. Brandon stood in the hallway with 2 men I'd never seen before. They were loading cardboard boxes onto wheeled carts. The filing cabinets lining the hallway stood open, empty. Through the open door of my father's office, I could see the safe hanging ajar. "What are you doing?" My voice came out stronger than I felt. Brandon turned, and that smirk was still on his face. "Securing company property. Someone needs to protect our assets. Those are company records. You can't just take them." "I'm the VP of Hammond & Sons," Brandon said. "I have every right to secure sensitive documents, especially now that you're trying to steal the company through some fraudulent trust scheme." "It's not fraudulent. Martin has all the documentation. We'll see what our lawyers say about that." He nodded to one of the men, who pushed a cart full of boxes toward the service elevator. "In the meantime, I'm making sure you can't destroy evidence or tamper with records." I moved to block the cart, and the second man stepped forward. He was 6 feet tall and solid muscle. "Ma'am, I'd suggest you step aside." "Who are you? You don't work here." "I'm providing security services," the man said flatly. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. Brandon laughed. "Really? You're calling the cops? Go ahead. Tell them the VP of a company is removing files from the company office. See what they say." The dispatcher answered. I explained the situation, trying to keep my voice steady. They said they'd send an officer. I stood there, phone in hand, watching as Brandon and his hired men loaded box after box. Financial records, client files, project histories, contracts, everything. 20 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. By then, Brandon had loaded most of the boxes into his truck. "Officers, thank goodness," Brandon said before I could speak. "This woman is trying to steal our family business through forged documents. I'm securing company property before she can destroy evidence." "That's not true," I said. "I'm the majority owner. I have documentation. He's removing records without authorization." The older officer looked between us. "This sounds like a civil matter, not a criminal one. Is this a business dispute?" "I'm a company officer with authorized access," Brandon said smoothly. "She's making false claims based on supposedly finding documents that conveniently give her control after 30 years. My father and I believe the documents are fraudulent." The younger officer looked at me with something like pity. "Ma'am, if he's a company officer with building access, we can't stop him from removing property. You'll need to resolve this through the courts." "But he's stealing company records." "It's not theft if he has authorization," the older officer said. "Get a lawyer. File a restraining order if you need to. But there's nothing we can do tonight." Brandon's smirk widened. "Thank you, officers. I appreciate your professionalism." The police left. Brandon loaded the last boxes and drove away, leaving me standing in the gutted office. I climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, needing to see how bad it was. The file room was bare. 30 years of records, gone. In my father's office, desk drawers hung open. I tried to log into the computer system, thinking at least we had digital backups. But when I entered my credentials, the screen flashed red. Access denied. Password changed. I ran to the server room on the 2nd floor. The door was unlocked. Inside, the backup drives were missing from their slots. 3 external hard drives that held copies of everything. Gone. My phone rang. "Martin." "Althea, where are you?" "The office." Brandon took everything. All the physical files, the backup drives. He changed all the passwords. Martin swore quietly. I was afraid of this. Listen to me carefully. Do not go back there alone. Gerald and Brandon are going to fight this, and they'll use anything they can against you. It's too late. They already did. That's when I thought to check the bank accounts. I pulled up the Hammond and Sons business account on my phone. As project manager, I had read-only access for budget tracking. The account balance made my stomach drop. The operating account should have held close to $3 million. Instead, it showed $87,000. Martin, I said slowly, someone transferred money out of the main account. How much? Almost $3 million. It went to something called Hammond Holdings, LLC. Silence on the other end. Then Martin said, That's a shell company. Brandon must have set it up months ago. He's been planning this. But that money is for payroll, for materials. We have active construction sites that need to pay suppliers. Our crew needs paychecks in 4 days. I know, Martin said quietly. This just became much more complicated. I sat down on the floor of the server room, my back against the wall, and stared at my phone screen. The number didn't change. $87,000. Not enough to run a construction company for even a week. My father and brother hadn't just taken records. They'd gutted the company's ability to function. And they'd done it legally, or at least legally enough that the police wouldn't help. What do I do? I asked. Come to my office first thing Monday morning. We'll figure this out. But Althea, I need you to prepare yourself. This is going to get worse before it gets better. I drove home at midnight, exhausted and terrified. When I finally fell into bed, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Brandon's smirk, kept hearing my father's words. A job at Wendy's if she's lucky. Maybe he'd been right. Sunday afternoon, I sat in Martin's home office while he pored over bank statements on his laptop. His wife brought us coffee neither of us drank. Outside, families walked dogs and kids rode bikes. Normal life, continuing while mine fell apart. The transfer was authorized, Martin finally said. Brandon has signatory authority for transfers under $5 million. It's technically legal, but it's theft. Morally, yes. Legally, it's more complicated. Hammond Holdings LLC is registered in Delaware with Brandon as the sole member. He'll claim it was a legitimate business restructuring. We can sue to recover the funds, but that takes time. How much time? Months. Maybe a year. I set down my untouched coffee. The company doesn't have months. Payroll is due Thursday. We have 68 employees depending on those paychecks. Active projects that need material deliveries, or they'll shut down. Clients who will sue us for breach of contract if work stops. Martin nodded grimly. I'm filing emergency motions first thing Monday morning. But even expedited hearings take time. A week minimum to get in front of a judge. What about a loan? Can't I use my ownership stake as collateral? You can try. I'll draft a letter confirming your majority ownership. But banks are risk-averse, and with the ownership in dispute, they may be reluctant. Monday morning, I was at First National Bank when the doors opened at 9. Douglas Patterson, the branch manager who'd known my father for 20 years, greeted me in the lobby. I explained what I needed. His smile faded as I talked. When I finished, he said, I'm sorry, Althea. I can't help you. Why not? The trust is legitimate. I own 51%. Douglas looked uncomfortable. Your father came in Saturday morning, before the party. He told me you were having mental health issues and that you might try to commit fraud against the company. He filed paperwork disputing the trust's legitimacy. The room tilted. He did what? He said the documents were forged. He requested that we freeze all accounts pending legal resolution. Douglas spread his hands apologetically. We had to comply. It's bank policy when ownership is disputed. Saturday morning? Before the party? The timeline clicked into place. He knew. He already knew about the trust. I can't speak to that. I'm sorry, Althea. Once the legal situation is resolved, come back and we'll talk. But right now, my hands are tied. I tried 3 other banks that afternoon. Sterling Federal, Community Trust, Western Bank and Loan. All 3 turned me down. The frozen accounts made Hammond and Sons too risky. One loan officer said it bluntly. We don't finance companies in the middle of ownership disputes. Too much liability. I called clients next, hoping to negotiate early payments that might help with cash flow. Most didn't answer. The ones who did were polite but distant. Word had spread through the industry about the party incident. No one wanted to touch a company imploding in family drama. The one exception was Hartman Development, our biggest client. Their project manager, a man named Stephen, called me back within an hour. Althea, I'm sorry, but we're terminating our contract with Hammond and Sons. Effective immediately. Stephen, please. We can work this out. The ownership situation will be resolved soon. It's not just about ownership. We heard what happened at the retirement party. Honestly, the instability concerns us. We can't have our projects caught in the middle of a family war. We'll pay for work completed through last Friday, but we're bringing in another contractor to finish. The Hartman project was worth $1.2 million. Losing it meant laying off 20 people immediately. I spent Tuesday in Martin's office while he prepared legal filings. Every hour brought worse news. Vendors called demanding immediate payment. The construction superintendent called to say half the crew at the Riverside project walked off the job because they were worried about paychecks. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing with texts and calls. Wednesday afternoon, a courier delivered a certified letter to Martin's office. Brandon had filed a lawsuit. Against me. Against my mother's estate. Against Martin, for allegedly conspiring to commit fraud. The lawsuit claimed the trust was fraudulent, that my mother never intended to create it, that Martin and I had forged documents after her death to steal the company. Brandon demanded I relinquish all shares immediately and pay $8 million in damages for the harm my fraud had caused. Attached to the lawsuit was a sworn declaration from Gerald supporting every claim. My own father had signed a document calling me a fraud and a thief. There's more, Martin said quietly. They've requested an emergency restraining order. The hearing is in 72 hours. If the judge grants it, you'll be prohibited from accessing company property, accounts, or even representing yourself as an owner. Can they do that? If they convince the judge you're a threat to company assets? Yes. I read through the lawsuit with shaking hands. Brandon had hired Whitmore and Associates, the biggest litigation firm in the state. They'd produced a 30-page complaint full of legal language that made my mother sound like a con artist and me sound like her accomplice. How do we fight this? I asked. Martin hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. What is it? My firm's managing partners called an emergency meeting this morning. Whitmore and Associates sent them a letter. They're threatening a malpractice lawsuit against our firm if we continue representing you. They claim I participated in creating fraudulent documents and that continuing to represent you makes the firm liable. That's ridiculous. The documents are real. I know, but Whitmore and Associates has deep pockets and a reputation for burying opponents in litigation. My partners are scared. He met my eyes. They've ordered me to withdraw as your attorney. The floor dropped out from under me. You're abandoning me? I don't want to. Personally, I believe you completely. But I'm not the only partner in my firm. If I refuse, I'll be fired. And that doesn't help you either. He handed me a business card. This is Patricia Reeves. She takes pro bono cases through the Women's Legal Defense Fund. She's good. Really good. Tell her I sent you. I took the card with numb fingers. Everything was falling apart faster than I could process. That evening, I sat in my apartment and looked at my bank account. $412. That was all I had. My last paycheck from Hammond and Sons had been Friday, before everything exploded. I'd been living paycheck to paycheck, saving what I could. But construction management didn't pay as much as people thought. Not in a family business where your brother made 3 times your salary for half the work. I couldn't afford Patricia Reeves. I couldn't afford any lawyer. I had $412 and a lawsuit demanding $8 million. I did something I swore I'd never do. I drove to my father's house. The house where I grew up looked exactly the same. Red brick, white shutters, the oak tree in the front yard where I'd hung a tire swing as a kid. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, gathering courage. My father answered on the third knock. He'd been drinking. I could smell it from the doorway. What do you want? His words slurred slightly. Dad, please. Can we talk? I just want to understand why you're doing this. You know exactly why. He stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind him. You and your mother, scheming behind my back for 30 years. Controlling me. Trapping me. I didn't know about the trust. Mom never told me. Liar. His face twisted with anger. Carol was a snake. She trapped me in that marriage with her money, spent 30 years making me feel like I wasn't good enough, like I needed her permission to run my own company. And now you're just like her. Dad, that's not what happened. Mom loved you. She tried to control me, he shouted. Every time I made a decision, she questioned it. Every time I wanted to expand, she worried about risk. She didn't trust me with my own company. I saw it then. The real reason for his hatred. Not the trust itself, but what it represented. My mother had been right to protect her investment, and my father couldn't forgive her for it. "I'm your daughter," I said quietly. "Don't I matter at all? You're her daughter. You've always been hers, never mine. Brandon is my son. He's the one who deserves the company." Brandon appeared behind him, phone in hand. "Getting sentimental?" He started recording. "Please, keep talking, Althea. Tell Dad how you plan to steal everything he built. Get angry. Threaten him. Give me something I can use in court." I looked at my brother, at the phone pointed at my face, at my father's expression of disgust. Nothing I said would change their minds. They'd already decided who I was, what I was worth. I left without another word. Wednesday evening, I woke to my phone exploding with notifications. 73 text messages, 46 missed calls. Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all blowing up. Brandon had posted on every platform. Long, detailed posts claiming I was trying to steal the family business through forged documents. He'd included screenshots that looked like bank transfers from Hammond and Sons accounts to my personal accounts. The images were fake, but convincing. He'd tagged every client, every vendor, every industry contact we had. The posts already had hundreds of shares. My phone rang. It was Ashley, a friend from college who worked in marketing. "Althea, what the hell is going on? Brandon's saying you embezzled money." "It's not true. Those screenshots are fake. He's trying to destroy my credibility before the court hearing. You need to get ahead of this. Post your side of the story." "And say what? That my father and brother are lying? No one will believe me." She was quiet for a moment. "Some people will, but you need to act fast." I tried to draft a response post, but everything I wrote sounded defensive, desperate. After an hour, I gave up. The damage was done. Thursday morning brought fresh disasters. 3 major vendors called demanding immediate payment, or they'd stop supplying materials to our job sites. The construction superintendent called to say half the remaining crew had quit. My landlord called because someone had told him I was under investigation for fraud, and he wanted me out of my apartment. That someone had been Brandon. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for Friday afternoon. I called Patricia Reeves. "I got Martin's message," she said. "I've reviewed the basics of your case. I'd like to help, but I need to be honest with you. Whitmore and Associates is a tough opponent. They bury people in paperwork and motions, and my schedule is packed. I can't take your case right now. Please. I have nowhere else to turn. I'm sorry. Try the Legal Aid Society. They might be able to help." Legal Aid was backed up for 6 weeks. The restraining order hearing was tomorrow. I represented myself at the hearing, stood in front of Judge Morrison and tried to explain that the trust was real, that my father and brother were retaliating against me. Brandon's lawyers presented their case with polished confidence. They had exhibits, affidavits, expert witnesses. I had nothing but my word. Judge Morrison granted the temporary restraining order. I was prohibited from entering Hammond and Sons property, from accessing accounts, from contacting employees, from representing myself as an owner. Violation meant immediate arrest. As I left the courthouse, my phone rang. An unknown number. "Is this Althea Hammond?" "Yes. This is Detective Sarah Chen with the District Attorney's Office. We've opened a criminal fraud investigation based on complaints filed by Gerald and Brandon Hammond. I need you to come in for questioning." "Criminal investigation?" "Yes, ma'am. When can you come in?" I scheduled an appointment for Monday, hung up, and sat in my car in the courthouse parking lot. Criminal investigation. They weren't just suing me. They were trying to put me in prison. Friday evening, the local news ran a story. Construction company Air accused of fraud. They showed the photo from my company ID, making me look guilty just by existing. The reporter interviewed Gerald, who spoke sadly about his daughter's mental health issues and his hope she'd get help. My phone rang all night with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Some were reporters. Some were people from high school I hadn't talked to in 15 years, calling out of morbid curiosity. I stopped answering. Saturday morning, Hammond and Sons Construction filed for bankruptcy. Brandon released a statement saying the company had been destabilized by my fraudulent claims and couldn't continue operations. 68 people lost their jobs. 3 of them found me at the grocery store. Miguel, who'd worked as a foreman for 12 years. Donna, who'd been the office manager since before I was born. James, a carpenter with a pregnant wife at home. They were angry, hurt. They'd seen the news, read Brandon's posts. They believed I'd destroyed their livelihoods. "We trusted you," Donna said. her voice shaking. Your mother was a good woman. How could you do this to her memory? I didn't, I tried to explain. Brandon is lying. The trust is real. I'm trying to save the company. By bankrupting it? Miguel shook his head. We have families, Althea, kids to feed. And you took that away because you wanted control. They left me standing in the produce section, people staring. I abandoned my cart and went home. By Sunday, I couldn't pay rent. My credit cards were maxed from the legal consultation fees I'd paid before Martin withdrew. I packed what I could fit in my car and left my apartment. I spent that night parked behind a 24-hour diner, trying to sleep in my back seat. It didn't work. 2 weeks sleeping in my car taught me things I never wanted to know. Which parking lots had security that didn't care. Which restaurants had bathrooms where I could wash up. Which libraries had free Wi-Fi and didn't ask questions. I'd lost 12 pounds. My clothes hung loose. Dark circles bruised the skin under my eyes. I looked exactly like what I was, a woman who'd lost everything. The criminal investigation was moving forward. Detective Chen had questioned me for 3 hours, treating me like a suspect even though I was the victim. The DA's office had seized my phone, my laptop, everything. I was using a cheap prepaid phone I'd bought with the last of my money. The case against me kept growing. Brandon and Gerald had produced more forged documents, more fake evidence, bank transfers I'd never made, emails I'd never sent. They'd been careful, professional. The forgeries were good enough to fool investigators. My public defender, a tired woman named Rachel who carried 80 cases at once, told me the evidence looked bad. I believe you, she said. But belief doesn't win trials. We need proof, and they've built a very convincing narrative. Tuesday afternoon, Hammond & Sons Construction officially closed. The bankruptcy filing cited management fraud and fiscal irresponsibility. The news article quoted Brandon extensively. He played the grieving son whose father's company had been destroyed by his sister's greed. I sat in the library, reading the article on the public computer, and felt nothing. I'd moved past anger into a kind of numb acceptance. This was my life now. Homeless, broke, facing criminal charges, my reputation destroyed. My phone rang. Emma Cartwright. She'd been the company accountant for 6 years before retiring last year. She was 70 years old, sharp as a tack, and one of the few people who'd worked closely with my mother. Althea, where are you? I've been trying to reach you. I'm around. I didn't want to admit I was living in my car. I know Brandon is lying. I remember Carol's involvement in the company. She wasn't just a silent partner. She saved that business 3 times when Gerald nearly bankrupted it with his gambling. I sat up straighter. Gambling? You didn't know? Emma sighed. Your father had a serious gambling problem. Horses, poker, sports betting. Carol covered his debts for years. That's why she insisted on the partnership structure. It wasn't about control. It was about survival. This was new information. Important information. Can you testify to that? My memory isn't enough. We need documents. Proof. Emma paused. Did your mother have a safe deposit box? I don't know. Maybe. She mentioned it once, years ago. Said she kept important papers somewhere safe. If she documented the partnership, the originals might be in that box. I spent the rest of Tuesday calling banks. On the 7th try, Second Union Bank confirmed that Carol Hammond had maintained a safe deposit box. But I wasn't listed as authorized. They wouldn't let me access it without a court order. Getting a court order required a lawyer. I didn't have one. Rachel, my public defender, was handling the criminal case. She didn't have time for civil matters. Wednesday morning, Emma called again. I had another idea. I still have access to my old work email. The company never deactivated it. I can search for old correspondence. What are you looking for? Anything that mentions Carol's partnership. If I can find emails discussing it, that's evidence. She called back 3 hours later. I found something. An email thread from 9 years ago between Carol and Gerald. They were discussing the partnership structure. Carol mentioned storing the original formation documents somewhere safe. The email mentions a storage unit. A storage unit. My mother had rented one years ago for her nursing textbooks and personal items. I'd been automatically paying the monthly fee from my checking account, thinking it was just sentimental stuff I couldn't bear to sort through after she died. I drove to the storage facility that evening. Sunset Self-Storage, Unit 217. I used the access code my mother had given me years ago. The gate opened. The unit was 10 feet by 20 feet, packed with boxes. My mother's old textbooks. Photo albums. her nursing uniforms from before she retired. I worked through the boxes methodically, fighting tears. So many memories, so much I'd forgotten. In the back corner, hidden behind a stack of medical journals, I found a fireproof safe. Heavy, locked with a combination dial. I tried everything. My mother's birthday, my parents' anniversary. Nothing worked. 11 p.m. The storage facility was closing. I had to figure this out now. In desperation, I tried my own birthday one more time, but in a different format. Month, day, year. 8/12/93. The safe clicked open. Inside were manila folders, legal documents, corporate filings, bank statements, handwritten notes in my mother's careful script, everything Martin had described, proof of the partnership, proof of my mother's investment. Originals, not copies. I reached for the folders with shaking hands. A flashlight beam hit my face, blinding me. "Ma'am, step away from the unit." A security guard stood in the doorway. "We got a report of a suspicious person trying to break into a unit. This is my unit. I have the code. I'm authorized to be here. The unit is registered to Carol Hammond. Can I see your ID?" My ID was in my car, which had been towed 3 days ago because I'd been parked illegally overnight. I hadn't been able to afford the impound fees. "I'm her daughter. She passed away 8 years ago. I've been paying the fee this whole time." The guard spoke into his radio. "Yeah, I've got someone here. Claims it's her unit, but it's not in her name. Looks like a homeless person." "Yeah, okay." He looked at me. "The police are on their way. You need to wait here. Please, I'm not doing anything wrong. These are my mother's documents. I need them. You can explain that to the officers." I sat on the concrete floor of the storage unit, the safe open beside me, the documents right there within reach, and waited for the police to arrive. My mother had given me everything I needed to win, and I'd lost it because I couldn't prove who I was. The police station holding cells smelled like disinfectant and despair. I'd spent 24 hours there before Emma posted bail. $1,200 she shouldn't have had to spend. The documents were in police evidence lockup. The storage unit was in my mother's name. I'd been arrested for trespassing because I couldn't prove my identity. The judge had set bail and scheduled a hearing for the following week. Emma drove me to her house. Her husband made soup I couldn't eat. She let me shower and gave me clean clothes. I felt like a ghost wearing someone else's life. "Brandon did this," Emma said. "He must have followed you to the storage unit and called in the suspicious person report. How did he know I'd be there? He's been watching you, tracking you. He wanted you arrested with those documents so he could claim you were trying to destroy evidence." Thursday morning, Emma showed me the news. Brandon had filed another motion in the civil case, arguing that the documents from the storage unit should be suppressed because they'd been mishandled and potentially tampered with by someone under criminal investigation. His lawyers were claiming I'd conveniently discovered documents that had been hidden for years. Rachel, my public defender, called. "Your criminal trial has been scheduled, 2 weeks from now. The trespassing charge is minor, but combined with the fraud investigation, the prosecutor is pushing hard. They want to make an example out of you." "What about the documents? The proof?" "They're in evidence. But Althea, there's something you need to understand. Even if those documents are legitimate, you're facing criminal charges now. Criminal and civil cases are separate. Winning one doesn't automatically win the other. So even if I prove the trust is real, I could still go to jail?" "Yes. And Brandon's lawyers are using your arrest to argue that you're not fit to run a company, that you're unstable and dangerous." I ended the call and stared at the wall. This was it, the end. I couldn't fight anymore. Emma sat beside me. "There's something I need to tell you, something I should have told someone years ago." "What?" "I have copies of Hammond and Sons' real financial records. From the last 15 years, I made backup copies every month on my personal hard drive. It was against company policy, but I didn't trust Gerald. He was too erratic, too secretive. Why are you telling me this now?" "Because those records show Brandon embezzled over $2 million through fake vendor invoices. For 5 years he created shell companies and billed Hammond and Sons for services that were never performed. The money went straight to his personal accounts." I turned to stare at her. "You knew Brandon was stealing?" "I suspected. But I couldn't prove it without accessing accounts I wasn't authorized for. I was about to go to Carol with my concerns when she got sick. After she died, I lost my nerve. Gerald scared me, and then I retired." She looked at her hands. "I should have said something. If I had, maybe none of this would have happened. Do you still have the records? Every file, every spreadsheet, every fraudulent invoice. It's all there. That's evidence of a crime. We can take it to the police. Emma shook her head. If I come forward, I have to admit I violated company policy by keeping unauthorized copies. Brandon's lawyers will tear me apart. They'll claim I fabricated the evidence. At my age, with my memory, I'm an easy target. But it could save me. I know. That's why I'm willing to do it. If you want to use the files, they're yours. I thought about what it meant. Emma risking her reputation, possibly her freedom. Me using evidence that might be challenged in court. We'd be gambling everything on one desperate play. Or I could take the deal Rachel had mentioned. Plead guilty to trespassing, drop all claims to the business, and Brandon would drop the civil suit. I'd be free. Broken, but free. I need to think, I said. That night I couldn't sleep. Emma had given me her guest room, but I lay awake staring at the ceiling, weighing options. Fight or surrender. Risk everything, or walk away with nothing. I thought about my mother. About the trust she'd set up, the protection she'd tried to give me. About how she'd spent 30 years cleaning up Gerald's messes and never got credit. I thought about the employees who'd lost their jobs. About Miguel and Donna and James, all the people who'd worked hard and deserved better. I thought about Brandon's smirk and Gerald's disgust. About a lifetime of being second best, of proving myself over and over while my brother coasted on charm and lies. Friday morning I called Rachel. I'm not taking the deal. Althea, please reconsider. The odds aren't good. I know. But I'm done running. I want to fight. I called Emma next. I need you to connect me with someone. A lawyer who'll take on Whitmore and Associates. Someone who isn't afraid. Emma knew someone. Patricia Reeves, the attorney who'd turned me down before. Emma called her personally, explained everything, begged her to reconsider. Patricia called me that afternoon. Emma sent me the financial records. I've reviewed them. If they're authentic, Brandon Hammond is looking at serious prison time. They're authentic. Emma is willing to testify. This is a complicated case. Whitmore and Associates will fight dirty. And honestly, you look bad right now. Homeless, arrested, under investigation. The optics are terrible. I know. But I'm innocent. And I'm tired of being treated like I'm not. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. The civil hearing is in 3 days. That's not enough time to prepare properly. If we go forward, we'll be underprepared against the best lawyers in the state. If we ask for a continuance, Brandon will have time to destroy more evidence or create more forgeries. What do you want to do? Fight. Now. I'm done waiting. Okay. Patricia's voice changed, became sharper. Then we work through the weekend. I'll need Emma's testimony prepared. I'll need you to walk me through everything that happened. And I need you to understand something. If we lose this hearing, it makes the criminal trial almost impossible to win. We're betting everything on one shot. I understand. Good. Because I'm about to ruin Whitmore and Associates' whole week. Monday morning, I walked into the courthouse wearing a borrowed suit from Emma's daughter. Patricia met me in the hallway, carrying 2 briefcases full of documents. Ready? She asked. No, but let's do it anyway. The courtroom was packed. Gerald sat with Brandon and 3 lawyers from Whitmore and Associates. They looked confident, relaxed. Brandon caught my eye and smirked. Judge Morrison took the bench. We're here for the preliminary injunction hearing in Hammond versus Hammond. Let's begin. Whitmore's lead attorney, a man named Richard Whitmore himself, stood first. He spent 20 minutes arguing that the trust was fraudulent, that my mother had been manipulated or confused, that I'd conspired with Martin to forge documents. He presented affidavits, expert testimony, document analysis. Then Patricia stood. Your Honor, I'll be brief. The trust is legitimate. We have the original formation documents, recovered from Carol Hammond's personal storage unit. These documents were created 30 years ago by independent counsel, notarized, and properly filed with the state. Mr. Whitmore can question their authenticity all he wants, but the facts don't lie. She placed the documents on the evidence table. These are Carol Hammond's bank records from 30 years ago, showing the $50,000 transfer to Hammond & Sons Construction as startup capital. Here are the corporate filings establishing the partnership. Here are the trust documents creating the inheritance structure. Everything is in order. Richard Whitmore stood again. Your Honor, those documents were mishandled. Miss Hammond was arrested while attempting to remove them from a storage unit. Their chain of custody is compromised. The storage unit belonged to Carol Hammond, Patricia said calmly. Althea Hammond has been paying the rental fee for 8 years. She had every right to access her late mother's property. The arrest was improper, and those charges will be dropped. The documents are authentic and admissible. Judge Morrison examined the papers. They appear legitimate. Mr. Whitmore, do you have evidence they're forgeries? The timing is suspicious, Your Honor. These documents conveniently appear just when Miss Hammond needs them. They were always there, Patricia said. Carol Hammond hid them because she knew Gerald would challenge her partnership if he found them. She was protecting her investment and her daughter. I watched the judge's face. She looked skeptical, but interested. Patricia continued. But let's talk about why we're really here. This isn't about a disputed trust. It's about theft and retaliation. May I approach? Judge Morrison nodded. Patricia placed a laptop on the evidence table and connected it to the courtroom display. This is Emma Cartwright, former accountant for Hammond & Sons. She maintained backup copies of the company's financial records. Richard Whitmore jumped up. Objection! Those records were obtained improperly. Mrs. Cartwright was authorized to create backups as part of her job responsibilities. These are official company records. Patricia opened a spreadsheet. This shows 5 years of payments from Hammond & Sons to various vendors. Precision Materials, Southwest Supply, Hartman Logistics. She pulled up more files. Here are the incorporation documents for those vendors. They're all LLCs registered in Delaware. They're all owned by Brandon Hammond, and none of them are legitimate businesses. The courtroom went silent. Patricia continued, ruthless now. Over 5 years, Brandon Hammond created shell companies and submitted fake invoices to Hammond & Sons. The company paid the invoices. The money went to accounts controlled by Brandon. $2.3 million in total. He's been embezzling from his own family's business. Brandon's face went white. Gerald stared at the screen. Here are the bank records showing where the money went. Brandon's personal accounts. A vacation home in Colorado he bought with cash. A boat. Gambling debts paid off. Patricia clicked through image after image. And here are emails between Brandon and an associate discussing the scheme. Quote, Dad never checks the vendor list. As long as the amounts are under $50,000, no one questions anything. End quote. Richard Whitmore stood. Your Honor, this is irrelevant to the trust dispute. It's absolutely relevant, Patricia said. It shows a pattern of fraud and theft by Brandon Hammond, not Althea. It shows who the real criminal is in this family. She turned to face Gerald and Brandon directly, and it gets worse. These records also show Gerald Hammond's gambling debts, casino markers, loan payments. Over 10 years, Gerald lost close to $4 million gambling. The only reason Hammond & Sons stayed afloat was because Carol kept bailing him out. Gerald stood, face purple. That's a lie. Sit down, Mr. Hammond, Judge Morrison said sharply. Patricia wasn't done. Carol Hammond didn't create the trust to steal the business. She created it because Gerald was actively destroying it, and she needed to protect her investment. She gave Althea the shares because she knew Gerald would never treat his daughter fairly. She was right. Look at what happened when Gerald found out about the trust. He and Brandon immediately looted the company accounts, stole records, and framed Althea for their own crimes. She placed one more document on the table. This is the $3 million transfer Brandon made the night of the retirement party. He moved it to Hammond Holdings LLC, a shell company he created 3 months ago. He was planning this. They both were. Richard Whitmore tried to respond, but he was flustered now. His whole case was collapsing. Judge Morrison studied the documents. The courtroom held its breath. Finally, she spoke. I've seen enough. The trust is legitimate. Carol Hammond had every right to structure her investment as she chose. Althea Hammond is the majority shareholder of Hammond & Sons Construction. The restraining order is lifted immediately. Brandon jumped up. Your Honor, you can't— Sit down, Mr. Hammond. Judge Morrison's voice was ice. Furthermore, based on the evidence presented, I'm referring this matter to the district attorney for criminal investigation. Mr. Brandon Hammond, you'll want to speak with your attorney. And Mr. Gerald Hammond, you may want to do the same. She turned to me. Miss Hammond, you have full legal authority over the company and its assets. Mr. Brandon Hammond, you are ordered to return all company funds and documents within 48 hours. Failure to comply will result in contempt charges. This court also awards damages to Miss Hammond for legal fees and harm caused by this fraudulent lawsuit. The gavel came down. I sat there, unable to move. Patricia smiled. We won. The next week moved fast. The DA dropped all charges against me. Brandon was arrested for embezzlement and fraud. Gerald entered a plea deal and went to rehab for his gambling addiction. The state licensing board reinstated my project manager's license after reviewing the forged documents. But Hammond and Sons Construction was dead. Too damaged, too much bad publicity. I didn't even try to revive it. Instead, I used the recovered money to pay full severance to all 68 former employees. Fair compensation for the jobs they lost through no fault of their own. Then I sold the company's remaining assets, the office building, the equipment, everything. With that money, I started Quinn Construction, my mother's maiden name. A fresh start. I asked Emma to be my CFO. She agreed immediately. Someone needs to keep you honest, she said with a smile. 6 months later, Quinn Construction landed its first major contract. Ironically, it was with Hartman Development. Stephen, the project manager who'd canceled our previous contract, called me personally. We heard what happened, what you did for your employees. That took integrity. We want to work with someone who has that. I hired back 12 former Hammond and Sons employees. People who'd believed in me when it mattered. We were small, but we were growing. I never went to Brandon's trial. Never visited Gerald in rehab. They were my family by blood, but not by choice. I learned that family is who shows up when you're at your lowest. Emma was family. Patricia became family. Martin called to apologize, and I forgave him because holding grudges takes energy I needed elsewhere. One afternoon, I stood at the construction site of our first major project, a community center in the neighborhood where my mother grew up. Quinn Construction's first landmark. I carried a photo of my mother in my jacket pocket. She looked young in the picture, smiling in her nursing uniform, ready to save the world. She'd given me more than shares in a company. She'd given me the chance to prove what I was worth. Not to my father or brother, but to myself. The hardest lesson I learned was this. Sometimes the people who should protect you will tear you down instead. Sometimes family is the enemy and strangers become saviors. The world doesn't owe you fairness. You have to fight for it. But survival isn't enough. Anyone can survive. Thriving means taking the pieces of your broken life and building something better. It means refusing to let cruelty define you. Success isn't inheriting what someone else built. It's creating something true to yourself, even when everyone says you can't. I thought about Gerald's words at that retirement party. A job at Wendy's if I was lucky. Brandon's sneer. The laughter I'd heard. I'd proven them wrong. Not by inheriting my mother's shares, but by fighting for them. By refusing to be erased. The daughter they never saw because they were too busy looking at their reflection in each other. I wasn't that invisible girl anymore. I was Althea Quinn, and I'd built something that mattered. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to fight for what was rightfully yours against people who should have supported you? Have you faced betrayal from family or had to rebuild your life from nothing? Drop your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who's going through something similar. If this story touched you, hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about people who refuse to give up even when the world said they should. Share this with someone who needs to know that fighting back is possible, that losing everything isn't the end. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that you're stronger than you think, and that sometimes the worst moments lead to the best beginnings. Keep fighting, keep building, keep proving them wrong.